can we stop hearing about Colorado finally?
No.
Give me my dang funeral music.
Don't steal my joke.
I'm going to.
No, I said it first.
Colorado is a mess. Welcome to the Rivalry Podcast, your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. I'm Jace. That's JP. We'll break the ice on what's going to be a spicy episode for the rivalry with a little bit of wheel route brought to you by the J Company. Fall in love with your home all over again at thejaecompany.com.
All right, are we ready for
Let's spin this thing. If you're not watching on YouTube at Rival Pod, do that. Get yourself the full visual here. What do we got for wheel route today?
Most disappointing team this season.
Man.
I feel like it's obvious, though.
Okay, you start then, because I'm not sure.
There's two options realistically in my mind.
Okay.
The only reason I'm not going with one is because they're still undefeated.
Okay. Who do you have?
That would be Florida State. Is not the one I would say, but that's the one I'm talking about. That's 4-0. That
Okay.
I would normally. I haven't been super impressed with them, but they are 4-0. They have found ways to win the game. The team that I actually think has been the most disappointing is Clemson.
Okay, I like that pick.
I think going in to the season as high of a ranking as they have, going out and getting just destroyed against Duke to start the year, getting one loss already, then this past weekend obviously losing in overtime to Florida State.
When you had a chance to salt the game away from a short
100%.
field goal. Oh, my
granted,
gosh.
that whole situation surrounding that kick was just...
It's
insane.
wild.
Yeah, it's insane. If you don't know, there was a guy, I don't know the real background details of it, but basically this guy wasn't even legal, according to the NCAA, that was the first day he was eligible to have full contact.
Yeah, he wasn't cleared for contact till game day.
He was going to start some financial advisement job or something, and Dabo called him and was like, hey, we need somebody to come kick. It was one of those situations, and then you put him in a situation like that to upset a team like Florida State is ranked as highly ranked as they were.
That's a microcosm of Clemson's season so far.
Yeah, 100%. But I think with the expectations that were surrounding them, coming into this season with Klubnik being the QB, everybody thought they were going to be back, that they were a potential college football playoff contender, and that ain't happening.
They're done.
Can we talk about how beautiful that is?
By the end of, we're not even to the end of September, and already Clemson is done.
It's music to my ears, but I feel like that's just such an obvious choice.
I like that one. That's a good one. I'm going to say Alabama.
Okay, I can see that.
Alabama, obviously, the loss to Texas, which, you no loss in September is a good loss, but it's a good loss. But they look lost at quarterback. I think Milroe is the guy going forward.
100%.
Alabama did a good job getting a win this weekend, but Alabama not living up to their standards. The 17-7 win over South Florida. Yikes.
Another tough game this weekend.
Yeah, they go to Mississippi State, I believe.
Yeah.
And so Alabama... No one here, let me put it this way, no one here is disappointed in the fact that Alabama looks terrible, but they are definitely not living up to what they had hoped to have at the beginning of the season. And yeah, they are one loss away from also just being taken out of the college football playoff running. They're still alive right now based on the schedule that they're going to play. They're going to have opportunity to earn their way in. And if they get in, they'll have earned it. But right now, boy, that's a long road ahead.
I don't see it. They've got a gauntlet ahead of them, man. And it is too many question marks. I'm not sold on them whatsoever.
Let's talk about the game that you're probably here for, because even if you're a Michigan fan like myself listening to this podcast, you're here to hear what we have to say about Ohio State Notre Dame.
Man.
Had the chance to be there, and I'll make a shameless plug right now, at RivalPod on Instagram and Twitter, on YouTube as well, of course, if you're watching there right now. But Instagram and Twitter have some just fantastic from the press box on the field. Here's the game-winning touchdown from right in front of us. Make sure you go check that out there. But give me your initial reaction to this game as the Buckeye.
Oh, man. I'm going to, from taking away the bias of being a Buckeye, that was the perfect college football game.
Agree.
The hype around it, the crowd energy, the tradition, the two Titan schools going against each other, just classic football teams, both highly ranked, both highly talented. This felt like, I know in years past, even when Notre Dame is good, you kind of feel like they're not legit.
Yeah.
This felt like a legit Notre Dame team, a legit Buckeye team, very evenly matched. It was the perfect football weather. It was late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Temperature outside, super nice. It was a night game under the lights. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it better. The way the game played out, Both teams had mistakes that could have been costly that ended up not really being costly. I mean, a touchdown with 1 second left that had to be reviewed. Like, seeing the fans going from, we just upset Ohio State, we got the win, to immediate sadness and how the heck did we blow that, is just, it was everything. It was indescribable. I called my wife after. She was asleep, but I left her a voicemail that just said, that was the greatest football game I think I will ever watch. And I've seen Ohio State win championships, and I think those are obviously sweet, but seeing that game play out the way it played out, the emotion behind it, the stress involved, to me, I don't know if I will ever see a football game like that again.
I don't think that and as a Michigan man, I'm cheering for just a giant hole to open up at midfield and swallow both programs forever. I will never forgive Notre Dame for what they did to me on Saturday night. Because first of all, they made me cheer for them because they're playing Ohio State.
It's true.
They made me believe that they'd beat Ohio State. Then they gave it away to Ohio State. So now I've not only had to watch Ohio State win, right, like 6 feet in front of me, but now I've had to cheer for Notre Dame. I will never forgive them for ruining. I got a beautiful shot on Instagram of, is it Buckeye Guy or the Big Nut or whatever? It's one of those
Big Nut,
ridiculous, absurd super fans that nobody likes. Just like in utter pain with all this green cloud around him. It was an absolute vibe, and I will never forgive Notre Dame for ruining that moment for me. Ever. I hope Notre Dame loses every game on their schedule from here until Jesus returns.
I'm jacked to see them play this weekend against Duke. It's going to be a phenomenal game.
Let's go Duke.
It's going to be a phenomenal game. I do think, and you already mentioned it, we were at the game, but being on the field for the final 5 minutes in those very intense moments, that stadium was so loud. And we went to Penn State last year. That was a rowdy crowd. This past
different
weekend
level.
blew it completely out of the water. I mean, I'm sitting there watching Kyle McCord go down, and I am in the back of my head, I'm like, I can't even hear myself think. Like, I can't imagine being in that position.
That much pressure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the experience was cool. You can check all of that out at Rival Pod. We gave you some behind-the-scenes look. Game day was there, so we gave you some behind-the-scenes looks for stuff like that. My guy Vince Vaughn was there. Love Vince Vaughn. He was also there. We got to see him for a little bit. Tons of cool stuff at Rival Pod. The game itself, though, let's talk a little bit more in detail about that. I want to hear your thoughts, because I know I'm going to disagree.
Yeah. Well, here's, rather than recapping the game itself, because I would just agree with you and say these are two of the most even teams that you're ever going to see. And it absolutely had to come down to the final play, because both defensive styles, offensive styles, so comparable to each other.
It was one of those weird games where I
it
feel
was like watching a mirror.
I feel like you go into those big games thinking, okay, which one of these two teams is a fraud? And by the end of the night, you go, this team isn't as good as we thought. And I walked away from that game going, both of these teams are as good as we thought.
Yeah, they are who we thought they were.
And I hate to quote that, but exactly right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Notre Dame has a legit offense. Sam Hartman is a legitimate quarterback. Their defense is legit.
Yep.
They are a good football team. They weren't like last year where they weren't good to start the year and they started to get things moving in the right direction at the end. This is a very good football team. And Ohio State was the one team that I was like, okay, they're the ones that have a couple of question marks for me. And I think they absolutely answered every single one of those this weekend.
Notre Dame has got a tough path to the playoff now.
Yeah.
Because to get in, obviously they're going to have to beat USC.
Yep.
And that's a tall task. But even if you beat USC, you've got one loss, and Ohio State's got one loss. Who are you going to take that point? Let's even say Ohio State loses to Michigan. And let's say Ohio State loses to Penn State and Michigan and has 2 losses. Do you still take Ohio State over Notre Dame? This is where not being part of a conference for Notre Dame really, really hurts them yet again. Will it hurt them as much next year in the expanded playoff? No. But this year, with only 4 teams getting in, that's a tough road for the Irish.
I think in that situation, though, they probably would put Notre Dame in because of the way that they lost. It's not like they went and got blown out.
And that's
you lost
fair.
with 1 second to go. At home, you had the game in the bag. If you go through and sweep the rest of your season and you pick up wins against a very good Duke team and a USC team, I think the committee's going to put you in.
Yeah, but there's no room for error.
Two-loss
no
team,
room
but
for error
Ohio
there.
State's not having 2 losses anyway. So.
There are really 2 main things that come out of this game that just deserve to be talked about. One of them is coaching, and one of them is Kyle McCord. And I want to start with McCord because it's been fascinating to watch Ohio. I was listening to a sports talk station here in town, and they were going on and on this morning about how sensational Kyle McCord was in this game. I would argue that. I would argue. Here's my, and I'm truly trying to be unbiased here. Kyle McCord, I'll give him credit first. The final drive from Kyle McCord was fantastic. To go, what was it, 65 yards in 85 seconds, something like that?
In 95 seconds.
Absolutely fantastic. The pass to the fourth down conversion, great pass. The completion to Igbokwe right there on the 1 yard line, great pass. But in the midst of that, even on that drive, you saw these little microcosms where you had a couple balls thrown in the dirt. You had one that went right through the defensive back's hands. That game, Notre Dame had the chance to end that game, and they couldn't do it.
I hear that argument, but I would disagree with it.
Well, but I'm saying like that's on the final drive that I thought was really good. He went 21 for 37, no touchdowns, 17 points for the offense. Some of that can be stat. If you look at that and go, he played a bad game, you're stat watching. But those numbers are still the numbers. He had a good game. He had a great final drive. He had a good overall game. But he's not in the tier one of the Caleb Williams and the Quinn Ewers and the McCarthys and the Bo Nix. The idea that was a sensational game with 17 points is just not realistic.
Here's what I think.
Be balanced in your opinion.
I think both can be right. I think you can walk away from that game and saying the way that he performed under pressure in that environment, putting up the stats that he did, he should have had a touchdown pass to Igbokwe.
Yeah, Ibuka's got to catch that.
Absolutely has to come down with that. He was without Marvin Harrison for a little bit there with an ankle injury. Then I think you can say the same thing for Hartman. Hartman had a couple of passes that should have been intercepted as well.
I don't disagree.
And so I think he played even with Hartman, and I think a lot of people look at Hartman as a top quarterback in college football. I don't think any rational fan looks at McCord and says he's a Caleb Williams, a J.J. McCarthy. But me as an Ohio State fan, I wanted to see how he reacts in big games. And to me, he well surpassed that. He was composed all night. He made big throws. He made plays when he needed to. And I think the ability to go down and in 95 seconds in an environment like that, when you have every possible worst scenario facing you, and he went and played how he did, to me, that is a phenomenal game. It's all about how you finish, and the way that he finished that game was tier one. So maybe not overall as a whole. If you're stat watching, sure, he missed 16 incompletions. You never want to see that. But if you're going to tell me that when I give that guy the ball and I need a final drive, he's going to look composed and he's going to be able to throw some dots, and he did, to me, that was a B plus A level grade game for him. From a composure at the quarterback position, that is what you need. That is what you look for, is leadership.
I think that's fair, though. Like, I think that's a balanced opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's balanced to say, hey, it wasn't, because what I hear you saying is actually, I hear us actually very close to being on the same page here, which is calling this performance sensational is prisoner of the moment type stuff. Here's the way I think you have to look at it. Let's say that every single thing happens exactly the way it does, but Chip Trayanum doesn't get in on the final rush. Is it still a sensational performance from McCord? No, it's a good performance, but it's not great.
Know. I would argue he did what he needed to do.
No, it's a good performance, but if Trayanum doesn't get in, but everything else that McCord specifically did is the same, you look at this game very differently. He is a good quarterback, and I think, to your point, his composure. I think his composure was excellent. Execution was good. Composure was excellent. And I thought the composure piece would be what would doom Ohio State. So I will give credit to Kyle McCord there.
I think the difference, though, to me, is when you get in that moment, when you have 95 seconds, you got to go 65 yards. The crowd is electric. They think that they just pulled the upset. I think all you're asking your quarterback to do is put you in a position to win. And he did that. So to me, do I still think even if they got to the one and Trayanum gets stopped that he was excellent? 100%. Because what more could he have done in that moment? He can't, if he's not given the play call to throw the ball, he can't throw the ball. So it wouldn't have been on him at Trayanum not getting in. I would have blamed the offensive line. There was also a fourth down near the end of the half where the Ohio State line just got no push. They got stopped. That was also on the same drive Igbokwe dropped a touchdown pass.
Not to go too much in the deep, but even the 4th and 1 call where you called a jet sweep for God knows why
was weird. I think the other thing, moving on from McCord, I think we're agreeing the same thing. I think
we're as close as a Buckeye and a Wolverine can get to agreeing on that performance.
And I think
we're not going to come all the way there.
To kind of finish that, you're looking at it from a radio host who's trying to get a reaction. I don't think rational Ohio State fans are immediately putting McCord in a Heisman. I was talking with somebody on Twitter during the game at Rival Pod.
Shameless plug.
I was talking to them, and they were saying something along the lines of they wanted to see McCord become elite faster than he was ready. And I don't ever see him being elite. I don't think years from now we're going to be talking about Kyle McCord was a great quarterback at Ohio State. I think you're looking at moments like this. Can he be a little bit better than Cade McNamara was for Michigan?
That's exactly it.
Can he go ahead and lead this team, not be rattled in tough environments, and give the ball to the playmakers who can be the elite level athletes they are, which he did this game.
I hate to agree with you, but you're exactly right.
He gave the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. at times when he needed it, and he made some phenomenal catches, including on that last drive. He had a clutch diving catch.
Yep. And Marv was quiet a lot of the night. Notre Dame 100%. Did a good job, but that's where Igbuka and Stover have to step up.
And honestly, I didn't 100% call it. Stover didn't have a touchdown, but the game plan that I said they were going to go for 100% worked. He had 8 or 9 targets, I feel like.
Talk to me about this, though. Talk to me about this, because this is the other big piece of the Ohio State thing. We'll get to Michigan here in a moment. Ryan Day's post-game press conference, and his on the field and then clarified in the press conference, has been a big talking point where he basically called out Lou Holtz and said, I want to know where Lou Holtz is right now. Holtz had essentially called Ohio State soft. Yeah. Talked a lot about toughness, talked a lot about how they had one bad half of football and it was 2021 up in Ann Arbor.
He didn't say that.
Yes, he did. He clarified that in the press conference. In the press conference, he said 2021 up in Ann Arbor was the one bad half of football in 2 years.
I did not see that. Wow.
What I want to know is, how does that strike you? Because you know I've got thoughts on this. And we talked about this a little bit on the way back from South Bend, but I formed some other thoughts too.
I'm on board with half of that. I didn't know that he clarified the Michigan. I heard the bad half, or he had one bad half.
2021 Ann Arbor.
I strongly disagree with that. And you know this because we've been at some of these games. Yeah. You had a very bad half last year against Michigan.
28-3 at home.
In the second half, you had a very bad half against Michigan. And I would say, not a bad half, you had a bad final 8 or 9 minutes against Georgia last year.
Oh, goodness, yes.
You made some horrible coaching decisions that I think genuinely cost that team a championship.
They collapsed.
And I don't think it was the team's fault. I think it was different plays, and that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I think
Go back in the archive, watch those.
And I would guarantee I said the same thing. There were specific moments of that Georgia game where his coaching decision, not any play by the player, impacted that game and made them lose. And I would stand firm on that hill. I would fight for it. I genuinely think that. So I disagree with that statement. I would be on board with you. They have played numerous bad halves of football. But when it comes to his comment at Lou Holtz, I want to know where Lou Holtz is at too, because I totally understand the passion that he came at him, and I am sick and tired of people acting like anything Ryan Day said was disrespectful. He said nothing against the man himself. He just said, you're going to call our team soft. I want to know where you're at now. We just beat the team that you said was going to beat us by 10, that was going to be more physical, and they want it. And guess what? The most dang physical way you can win a football game, by running it right down your throat and having a battle at the line. And they won that game, and I get it. You work your butt off. You see your players working their butt off, and to hear somebody go out there and disrespect them and then catch them in the moment like that, you're going to be fired up as the coach too. I have zero problem. Had he gone and said something personal or disrespectful, whole different conversation. But I don't care how old you are. If you're on TV and you're going to talk trash, you better get ready to receive it.
I hate the fact that we're agreeing today.
I didn't think it would happen.
I'll start with Holtz and then I'll go to the second part of the comment. But Lou Holtz, if you're going to make public statements, dink around and discover, man. Dink around and discover. Because here's the thing, like, if you're going to say it publicly, as much as I dislike Ryan Day as a coach, I love seeing passion from objectively. Yes. I love seeing passion from a coach to go, you want to talk about my players? All right, let's talk about it.
One final thing.
Yeah, please.
The thing that really annoys me about this is, had Notre Dame actually won, they wouldn't have let what Lou Holtz said about Ohio State go. So why does it have to be the other way? Why can Ryan Day not come back and fire some shots back?
If you're going to say it, you've got to be able to put up with it.
ESPN, all these other media outlets would have absolutely torched Ryan Day had they lost that game for the exact reason Lou Holtz. So to me, it is fair game.
And I agree with you. I don't know what Ryan Day is watching that he thinks he had one bad half of football in the last 2 years.
Horrid.
Absurd. And really, as much as I think Ryan has the right to fire back at Holtz, absolutely on board with that. This, I think, is what Lou Holtz is talking about, because Lou Holtz is not the first person. Lou Holtz is kind of copy-pasting the whole, well, Ohio State's not a tough team. That came from Michigan. That came from Michigan in 2021, where, and I think it was Josh Gaddis talked about, well, they're a soft team. They're a finesse team. They're not a tough team. That's where that came from. Lou Holtz is just copy-pasting. So all I heard, and this will tie back, all I heard from Ohio State camp heading out of 2021 into 2022 was how we're going to be tougher. We're not soft. We're going to be tougher. It was Brian Hartline. What we've done in the dark will come to the light. And you got smacked upside the head 28-3 in the second half in your own stadium. So what I see from Ryan Day is I think that comment from Holtz hit home because he knows what it's based on. He knows it came from Michigan, and he knows Michigan has proven it right. Ryan Day is all bark and no bite. Until I see him out tough Michigan, which is where that comment originated, it's all bark and no bite. You can say you're fired up about this and that. That's cool. That's all I heard going into the game in 2022 was they're fired up. We're going to prove it. And you did
But I mean,
nothing.
That's what this whole podcast is about. Everything comes down to that game. So I would say in the past, especially last year, Ohio State's defense was soft. This year, I think Notre Dame was a physical team. I don't think Lou Holtz was wrong about that at all. He even said some quote, I don't know it word for word. It was basically pack your lunch. It's going to be a full day's work.
Yeah.
And it was. But I think Ohio State proved the toughness factor. I wanted to give a shout out to Jim Knowles. I know we were talking about this on the way home, and Sam Hartman was looking great throughout that game. I mean, he was making passes. It looked like he was carving them up. The first couple of drives,
they were doing whatever they wanted,
They were doing
but
whatever
they
they
couldn't
wanted.
get points.
But then when the defense needed to make a play,
Yep.
they did.
Yep.
The very last drive, after they stopped Ohio State, they got the ball back, and you thought they were going to just pick up a first down the way the game had been going and run the clock out. Ohio State picked up a very nice couple of defensive plays. I will say, Marcus Freeman, why the heck are you doing a pass when you're up?
Yeah, I don't
understand that whatsoever, but thank you.
I think he went to the James Franklin School of Play Calling, which Ryan Day attends part-time, apparently.
It's little things like that changed the game, because had he done that, it would have forced Ohio State to do another timeout. They wouldn't have had a timeout when they got the ball back. When McCord did his intentional grounding, there was a 10-second runoff, and it would have been game. So that one decision 2 minutes ago completely lost them the game, and it was all on the head coach, which I'm sick and tired of hearing that Marcus Freeman is some elite level coach. People are always acting like it in every big game. Marcus Freeman is so good. He is trash. He's trash. He never wins a big game. I'm sick and tired of hearing it. It's over with.
I want to see.
Garbage.
Okay, well, fine. I want to see Ryan Day win a big game. And
What was this? This was a game under the lights at home in Notre Dame with the hype around him, and he punched him in the mouth at the end.
2022 was all bark and no bite at the end. We'll see. We'll see come late November.
Huge props to Ohio State's defense.
Ohio State, I actually feel like the bye week comes at a bad time because the team seems to be clicking. Obviously, they're hyped up after that game. Not a great time for a bye week, but here it is.
I disagree. I think...
Of course you disagree on a bye week.
Because it gives you extra prep time. I think, yes, it's nice when you have that time when you're starting to click to get together, but I think giving them 2 weeks before they play an undefeated Maryland team at home with a dangerous quarterback, you need all the time you can to prep. So they can look at Hartman, they can go back and they can fix that on the defensive side of the ball. Because I do think this defense is elite. I do think it's very good.
I was impressed with them.
I do think it's very good. So I'm not sad at all going into a game with, outside of McCarthy, McCord, and I would say Aller, the best Big Ten quarterback.
Talia's going to be an issue.
He's one of the better ones in conference. So I'm not sad about giving a little bit of extra prep time to the defense. And honestly, with Harrison going down with an ankle thing, I know he returned to the game. Giving a little bit more time for him to get right, I am not sad about it at all.
Let's talk about the other half of this whole podcast. Let's talk a little bit about Rutgers to the Rose Bowl. Michigan 31-7 over Rutgers. Just give me real quick, where are the Schianos at on this?
Obviously, Rutgers lost 31-7. We'll talk a little bit more about Michigan. It's currently at 3 out of 5 Schianos. They've got Wagner coming to town this weekend. Chance to be 4-1. 2 wins to become bowl eligible. I did see something where like ESPN's FPI or something gives them a 76% chance to make a bowl game. I do want to share just a small story, though, because I thought it was hilarious, and Jace doesn't even know that this was happening.
Oh, boy.
So we get ready. We watch Lee Corso put the Buckeye head on, make his pick. We were going to a local restaurant to try and find a place to watch the game. We couldn't get our media credentials for a couple hours. So we're going to go watch the Rutgers and Michigan game. And right when we leave, my father-in-law texts me and says, well, Rutgers isn't going to be shut out, and I see that it is 7-0. And I promise you, I've never seen Jace sprint walk so fast. I could not keep up with this man at all. I'm sweating.
It is power walking time.
Jace was panicking. He is frantic.
Because again,
we go into this restaurant.
We've got very limited cell service. So like we can't pull it up on Hulu or whatever.
We have to walk a decent amount to this restaurant. So we're walking like 10 minutes, and we go, and I can't even keep up with Jace, and I'm walking as fast as I can. He's crossing streets, not at crosswalks. He goes into this restaurant where there's a clear sign that says "Please wait to be seated," and he just disregards it. He goes and sits at a booth that says "Reserved for somebody at 12:30," and I'm like, Jace, we got to get out of here. That man was on a mission, and it was just like horse blinders on. He saw nothing but 7-0 deficit and a fear.
And then on top of that, this sports establishment does not have the Michigan game on. Mm-hmm. Okay, like South Bend is minutes from Michigan. The game, we're watching ESPN News.
Yeah,
and I'm like, excuse me, could we turn that?
And
and then we turned the game on like early second quarter or something.
Yeah,
something like that.
We made it by the end of the first, but barely.
I think it was maybe 7-7 at that point, something like that.
Yeah.
And Michigan the rest of the way. I don't know what those first 10 minutes were. Actually, I do. It was a completely blown coverage by Michigan, and Gavin Wimsatt just throws a 70-yard touchdown pass, and that was literally the only thing Rutgers did for the rest of the game. I believe it was somewhere in the realm of 110 passing yards for the other 58 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm. Nothing.
Blown and. That's something that as a Michigan fan, I can live with. Yeah, you don't want to have, you can't let that happen, but you're bound to get, it's kind of like, it's almost like Notre Dame did with Henderson. They gave up one big explosive play where Henderson went almost 70 yards for a touchdown.
61 yards, I think.
The rest of it, they played very well. Despite losing the game, they played very well. It's the same type of thing. You can't let that happen, but a suffocating defense. Obviously, Mike Sanger still gets a nice pick six there. I thought Kirk Herbstreit made a really good point. He commented on, he was ranking his teams, and he had ranked Michigan, I think, 5th in, I don't know if that was his top 6 or like top performing teams or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been his top 6 teams, but he ranked Michigan wherever he ranked them and said, not quite the offensive fireworks that they'd wanted to have yet. And I think that's fair.
They've got the potential, but like you said, you take away the pick 6, which you can't discredit that. No, it was a phenomenal play. You only scored 24 points. And I do think Rutgers has a legit defense.
They do. And you could also take away, the big explosive play too.
Yeah.
Michigan it's a slower start than you want to have against Big Ten competition, but Michigan played a really good game. This is, again, the type of game where so much good, not perfect, but so much good stuff. There were no glaring issues that I saw, but there are definitely things that you could want to tweak and want to fix. Well, and that's okay.
What's funny is, I don't know why we all act surprised. This was the same stuff that was happening last year.
You're exactly
right. Where you
go
into halftime and it's a 10-7 game, and you're like, Michigan's not who we thought they were, and then they come out and dominate. Yeah. It has been that way every single game this year. It was 14-7 at half.
Maybe the first game of the year against ECU.
It's just the way Michigan plays. It's like they play with their food just to kind of get a feel for what the game plan was, and then they go, well, now we know what you're going to do, and now they just stab you in the neck and you're done.
And it's not. Obviously, you want to play well from the jump, but there has still not been anything. I would say the Bowling Green game was concerning to me just because of the amount of turnovers, and I said it's only a real concern if it happens again. It didn't happen again.
No.
Now, there's always the possibility, and you'll go every week going, well, is he going to do it again? You can't live that way. I think Harbaugh even said, you don't want to bridle the stallion. Like there's no change to the game plan for McCarthy. Had again a good game. Wasn't exceptional. Didn't have to be sensational. Didn't need him to be. Played a clean game. Good QBR rating. No turnovers. And that's the biggest thing you needed. This week against Nebraska. Nebraska's a weird team. They're not a good football team.
No, I think.
They're not. I don't know that they're bad, but they're definitely not good.
Yeah, I mean they're 2-2. Their only wins are coming against Northern Illinois, and then I forget who it was last week.
They beat Louisiana Tech this past weekend.
Louisiana Tech by 14.
But also it was a 14-7 game start in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
that's not great. That's a different level from, hey, we had a close first quarter, and then we just sat on you the rest of the way. That's a legitimate. We're struggling with this team.
100%. And their losses come against Colorado and Minnesota. Minnesota beat them 13-10. Colorado absolutely smoked them. I'm not impressed with them by any means.
Which, by the way, Minnesota lost to Northwestern. If that gives you a gauge on
Rutgers beat,
if that gives you a gauge on where this team's at.
So I do think the thing that's interesting. I don't really believe this is going to be a problem, but I am curious what this is going to look like. Nebraska only allows about like 46 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
And
it'll be a good test.
That is Michigan's game plan is we're going to go and run the ball and wear you down, and then we're going to throw it. And so I'm curious, especially with how Donovan Edwards has struggled so far this year, which has just been an anomaly in and of itself. I'm curious what that Michigan run game looks like. I don't think even if they stop them, I think Michigan's wide receivers, not Ronnie Bell,
Cornelius
Roman
Johnson.
Wilson, Cornelius Johnson.
Roman
those
Wilson,
guys are still too good. They're going to get separation. It's not going to matter. They're still going to win the game. I got Michigan 42, Nebraska 6.
Yeah, I think the run game will be interesting. I'd love to see Corum and obviously Edwards. I'd love to see him have a good day against a good defensive line, or at least a decent defensive line.
That statistically seems
correct.
Good.
Yeah, I'd like to see him have. I'd like to see him have success there.
You got to take account their competition.
The other thing, and this is where Michigan is. They're not. And Harbaugh even addressed this. You're not winning games by 30, 40 points, but you don't need to. It's not. You don't get points for the Oregon game, Colorado. Yeah, you're happy with that if you're a Duck fan, but you don't get extra points for that. Okay, as long as you're not struggling with teams late, I'm not concerned about it. Nebraska rather gave up 300 passing yards to Louisiana Tech. This might be a JJ McCarthy game. If they sell out for the run, this might be McCarthy slinging the rock again the way that he has been. Again, you don't need him to put up 50 points, but you do need him to be able to move the ball because Nebraska's secondary is just trash. The other interesting thing to watch in Nebraska's game is Harburg, their quarterback, ran for 157 yards on Louisiana Tech. Now,
Louisiana Tech.
It's Louisiana Tech, but that's going to be a huge feature of the game plan because their wide receivers are just not talented. The pass game is not good. So it's a very unique feel for Michigan's defense, something that they haven't seen a ton of yet that I think will be a good test. He may see a little bit of success early. And again, what Michigan tends to do is make those halftime adjustments. Jesse Minter does a great job of doing that. I expect this game to probably be, once again, uncomfortably close at the half, but Michigan to never really be in danger of losing it.
Well, I think an interesting point is
38-10, by the way. 38-10.
We talked about this a little bit this weekend, but Rutgers was your first real look at a mobile quarterback.
Yep.
And I think that was the perfect warm-up for a game like this, is you already know kind of what your game plan should look like, and it worked this past weekend. Wimsatt essentially did nothing. He was a non-factor.
Yep. And that's and Michigan's defense has been suffocating so
100%.
far.
So I would not be opposed to that. You had 38-10.
38-10 for Michigan in this one.
Pretty close to mine, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this game does not involve a lot of guesswork for Michigan. The game plan is pretty straightforward, and there's no reason that your project should involve any guesswork either. Go with the folks with integrity in their name. It's Elevated Integrity Construction. Big thanks to our friend Aaron Carroll and his team for supporting the podcast this year. Go with Elevated Integrity at elevatedintegrity.com. Wrapping up real quick here, JP. Stupid genius upset pick of the week.
We were both wrong horribly.
I had Penn State losing Iowa. That did not happen.
Nope.
By the way, Cade McNamara's whole thing in preseason about
I love it. Give it to him.
He said, please keep saying we're the worst offense in football. Please.
Will you look right there and say it?
Keep saying we're the worst offense in football. Please keep thinking we're the worst offense in football. Cade McNamara, you are the worst offense in football.
Awful.
Oh my goodness gracious. But we've got a defense that can finally score. Penn State stomps Iowa, and I'm not upset about it.
No.
By the way, should mention Stupid Genius also brought to you by our friends at the J Company, celebrating over 70 years of living space design at the JAEcompany.com. The scoreboard for Stupid Genius still 22-0. So who do you have this week as your upset?
All right. This week, I've got my guys from Mississippi State over number 12 ranked Alabama. They're 14.5-point dogs.
Okay.
And I'm ready for it.
I don't hate it.
I'm ready for it. They're playing at home, which is going to be huge.
Cowbells are out.
Can never go without more cowbells. So I got that. It's 14.5-point spread. I'm going big a little bit. I got to get back into it.
I was successful in calling Florida over Tennessee a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Give me South Carolina over Tennessee this week.
I almost went there, but I've been tricked into picking them, I think, twice already this year, and it's never worked.
Third time's the charm, baby. 11.5-point underdogs. I still don't buy Tennessee. Tennessee has obviously already lost a game to Florida. I don't buy Joe Milton. I do buy Spencer Rattler. I think this is a game South Carolina can win.
Is that at Tennessee?
It is at Tennessee. It's at Neyland, which is not easy.
No.
But as Lee Corso said, but not impossible. Last thing I want to hit on here is, can we stop hearing about Colorado finally?
No.
Give me my dang funeral music.
Don't steal my joke.
I'm going to.
No, I said it first.
Colorado is a mess. Colorado is a mess. Did you watch? You picked them to beat Oregon. Did you watch this game?
Here's the thing. You keep going on and on about Colorado, but no realistic person thinks that they're a national
Then
contender.
Stop giving them that kind of media coverage.
No, they're fun to watch. They are the most quotable team. Even when they lose 42-0, Coach Prime is spitting out amazing quotes.
What was it he said in the presser?
He goes into the presser and he takes it on the chin and he says, give it to me. Give me everything you've got. This is the worst we're going to look. I love that.
Brother plays
it's not gonna
USC.
look good. They play USC this week. They're still without Travis Hunter. It ain't going to be
My
pretty.
brother in Christ, USC is coming to town this week.
That's what I want to hear my coach say. I want to see him go out there and say, yeah, we absolutely got dominated, but I'm ready to fix this thing. I don't see how. They are just so fun to watch. I love watching Shedeur Sanders. I think he's incredible. Travis Hunter, I think, is incredible. Coach Prime, the energy he brings, the quotes that he brings, I think are fun to watch. I don't think they are ever going to be a top 4 team. I don't even know if I ever see them being a top 10 or top 15 team.
Well, they're not ranked right now.
They'll be border 15 to 25 range. Let him get some recruits in. There are going to be players that want to go play for a guy like that. I am excited to see that get turned around. I think they bring in exciting players. I just don't know how you can't root for a team like that that wins one game last year. They bring in a bunch of exciting players. They're going to win 7 or 8 games this year.
Again, I feel like I have to say this every week. I'm not against cheering for them to win games. I'm against do you believe now beating a 3-score underdog at home. That's what I'm against. That type of mentality. In year 1,
I don't expect it. But I think that they're going to get some good recruits because of what Prime is doing this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a 2-year gap, maybe, they start upsetting some of those teams.
I'll give Coach Prime a little bit of grace here and a little bit of I don't know. I'll give him some positivity, I guess. USC does not have a great defense. And Colorado does have a dynamic offense.
It does. It would be better if they had Travis Hunter. He's out for two more weeks.
USC did struggle with Arizona State this past week.
You know, in my heart of hearts, I wanted to take that as stupid genius.
I think it's a big noon kickoff. I'm going to be locked in on that screen.
No, you're not allowed.
I'm allowed to scope buffs.
No, Buffalo's only.
We'd also be remiss if we didn't finish out by mentioning that the team that offered Mel Tucker a 10-year, $95 million contract got absolutely curb stomped at home by Maryland.
And they also predicted they're going to beat Rutgers, which just is not happening. So I'm just going to throw that in there.
Nothing gives me more joy. Notre Dame giving up the win to Ohio State. Nothing could take away the joy of checking the score and watching Michigan State, the team that Mel built, get absolutely pummeled at home. They get to go to Iowa, Kinnick at night on Saturday night. And if you don't think I'll be flipping over from whatever,
both of those offenses, it's gross.
It is Sickos Committee all the way, and I am here for it. Be sure to follow at Rival Pod across social media and on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you're listening right now. And be sure to tell a friend. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.
We'll see you next week.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Rival Pod. Visit our Patreon and consider becoming a patron for exclusive bonus content, merch, and more. And be sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.